Good afternoon. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Oklahoma City Board of Adjustment. For Thursday, June 2nd. If any of you have a cell phone with you, I'd appreciate it if you shut it off or put it on airplane mode or whatever you have to do to make it be quiet. And let's begin. First order of business is to receive the minutes of the May 5th, 2016 meeting.
I move approval.
A second.
I have a motion and a second to receive the minutes of the May 5th meeting. Show your vote by, no? Yes?
There you go.
This is my meeting. This is what it says. I'm so sorry. I'm not your regular chairperson. Here we go. Continuous requests or withdrawals. Is there anybody who has an item on the agenda today that they'd like to see continued or withdrawn? Staff? No. Then we'll keep going. First item on the agenda is case number 14-216, request by Mass Architects for a variance. Would you come to the microphone, tell us your name and address, please?
Matthew Radcliffe with Mass Architects. We're at 18 West Park Place. And I also have with me the civil engineer of record for the project, Mark Grubbs.
And will you tell us something about your application?
Yes, I appreciate your considerations. We are attempting to further develop a property on near 50th and Lincoln to create a campus of buildings and utilize an undeveloped portion of that property for a new office building to be leased to state agencies and private corporations in that location. In an effort to make everything work and make the development stand, we're maximizing the use of the existing parking lot, which placed the building within that grassy area closer to the right-of-way than what is shown to be allowable. This seemed prudent at the time, as several of the buildings along 50th in both directions are kind of within that range, hit and miss along the way. And to pull the building any farther south would interfere with the ability to achieve those parking values. And, again, conferring with the civil engineer, that would actually take the retaining wall that we have there and actually make that retaining wall a little bit larger, a little bit deeper, and actually kind of create more of an adverse situation than as currently submitted. As noted in the staff report, that section of 50th is already improved to 4 lanes with the turn lane. We are maintaining that 17-foot easement as open and clear for any maintenance that needs to come through. Not even the parking lot is within that area. So we would just ask at this time that a variance be granted to allow the building to be constructed as submitted.
Is there anybody in the audience that wants to be heard on this matter? Members of the board?
So the staff report indicates that there's adequate space on the property, too, to locate the building and honor the front setback, but you're saying that you can't because of parking requirements?
Right. I mean, to their point, there is obviously space, but that space is currently being accounted for with the parking structure, with a surface lot. So if I take that building any farther south, and really because of the way the retaining walls and the grades, I really can't just apply that parking back on the north, so I can't offset that parking. So by moving the building farther south, I'm losing parking that I cannot regain. So that would make the parking numbers not support the development.
The way I understand this, we can either give them a variance for the setback or a variance for the parking. They can't do both. So do we want them to have plenty of parking, or do we want them to have the setback, is kind of where we are.
Okay.
Anybody else?
And, I mean, and really, the issue with the original design was laid out with the 25-foot setback being relating to the original 33-foot right-of-way, and what's causing the issue now is the 17-foot easement that is thereby pushing that 25-foot setback farther south. And that's a 17-foot easement that, you know, is really no longer needed with regards to improving the road. So as long as, you know, we're maintaining that as being clear for maintenance, it really shouldn't cause any issues.
I would note also that the staff report indicates that there's not any kind of site triangle issue here. So it's not that the location of the building will interfere with traffic visually.
I'll make a motion for approval.
I second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item case number 14216. Will you cast your votes, please? The motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Item number 2, case number 14221, request of David and Donna Cosper for a variance to allow a recreational vehicle as a temporary dwelling during construction of a permanent residence in the R1 Single Family Residential District located at 14800 South Pennsylvania.
Will you state your name and address for us, please?
Donna K. Cosper, and I live at 14800 South Pennsylvania Avenue. Yes, my husband and I lost our home in the May 20th, 2013 tornado, and right after the tornado, FEMA came out to our home and checked on everyone. We were right in the middle of the F5 part that came through, so they came through to make sure everybody was alive and okay. And following the tornado, we had problems with our insurance. They wouldn't pay. It became clear that they weren't going to pay for the house nor our living expenses. So in desperation, we went to the catastrophe center, and FEMA, we recognized the lady, so she had us talk with an attorney there on site, and then also visited with us about some of our options. They told us that one of the things that we could do, they no longer supplied trailers since Katrina, but one option was if we would keep the payment under $300, they would back us. So we looked for options, and one thing that we found was we could get an RV, a 26-foot RV, and put it on our property. We felt like that was a good option because we had animals, and we have 8 acres, and we could take care of everything, feed our animals, and kind of oversee our property because there was a lot of theft going on in the area, as you can imagine, with all of the homes down. So we parked our RV. We've been living in it ever since that time. We just, in December, finally settled with the insurance company, and now we're ready to start building. We've been excited to finally be able to move forward with our life. So this is Jim Bowers, Jr. He's my builder. And when they went to get the building permit, we were all excited to start building. We found out that we had an issue that we were actually living on the property in our RV. We had no knowledge of that prior to that because we thought since FEMA was a federal agency and they had helped us with all of that, that everything was fine. So now we've asked for a variance to go ahead and live in our in the RV while they hopefully speedily build us a new home, and hopefully we'll have a new home real quick and be able to move in our home soon. So that's why we're here, is asking for a variance to continue to live in our RV while they get our home completed.
How long are you anticipating that you're going to live in the RV?
We're thinking 6 to 9 months.
Is there anybody else in the audience who wants to be heard on this matter? Members of the board?
I move approval.
Second?
I think I would like to see the variance limited in time. Just by rule of thumb, you know, the rule of threes, it's going to take longer than you think it will and cost more than you think it will. I would say a year at least, maybe 18 months would be appropriate.
I agree.
Let's go 18 months, if that's acceptable to whoever's making the...
Does the ordinance not address that already?
The ordinance provides for up to 2 years.
Okay, so we do need to specify then.
If you don't specify, it will be
It's
2 years.
2 years would actually be okay with me. I could live with that.
So that's done as a byproduct. So yeah.
The motion's good as it stands. Okay, so cast your votes, please. Good luck to you.
Thank you so much.
Item number 3, case number 14222, request of Renee Maldonado for a variance to allow a front porch to extend more than 6 feet into the front yard area in the R1 Single Family District located at 3020 Northwest 21st Street.
Please, and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Janet, so I'm trying to translate for him.
Okay,
And then I speak real English, but I'm trying.
okay. I bet I speak less Spanish than you speak English, so we'll see what we can do here.
Okay, he's made fix the porch because he has the problem last time with the snow when it's leaking and the water, and then coming inside in the rooms because they are sleeping there, so he has a little trouble there. So he has family from California, and the cousin came and tell him he can fix it, and he say okay, but he don't take care and come in here in the city, forgot the permission for construction. So he is don't worry because supposedly has the concrete around the porch, and he don't take care, so has the problem now.
Can you ask him, is it going to be necessary for him to enlarge the slab that's already there, or is it just the overhang?
Okay, dice que si para usted fue necesario haberlo hecho grande o sea, ¿por qué lo hizo? He say really is for the kids running around the porch a little bit more large, but he's thinking about the kids, so he's never thinking do good or no. Yeah.
Members of the board?
Staff points out that the right-of-way here is 60 feet. Typically, it'd be 50 feet. That pretty much makes up the difference. Unless there's somebody who feels differently or is in opposition to this in the audience, I'd move for approval.
Is there anyone who wants to be heard on this matter today? No, I have a motion to approve case number 14222. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Will you cast your votes, please? And you are approved.
It's approved, it's don't,
It's approved.
okay. He say he deposit 1,000, no, it's 1,200.
Yeah.
Is for the court or it's don't worry
Yeah,
for
that's
that?
not our deal. Staff will be able to help you with that. John? Yes?
Thank you.
This nice gentleman right here will be able to help you with that.
Okay.
Item number 4, case number 14220, appeal of Rhonda Woods of the decision of the Historic Preservation Commission regarding the appeal of a certificate of appropriateness for the construction of an accessory building, HPCA 16-00028, located at 625 Northwest 19th Street.
Hi, I'm
Would you give
Rhonda.
us your name and address for the record, please?
I'm Rhonda Woods. I live at 1508 Claston Drive.
but I own the property at 621, 623 Northwest 19th. I always say I own it, but actually my husband and I own it. I have some handouts for, I only brought 5. I thought there was only 5 people, so we're going to have to share. I just have 5. You're going to have to sit up there. I'm sorry, I didn't know you were going to be here. You're welcome to come stand up here if you want. It's nothing that's not already in the information. Okay, and also, you know, I'm not used to being up in front of people like this, so I did write all my comments down, and I hope you don't mind if I read. Okay, so what we're talking about today is the OKC HP Design and Sustainability Standards and Guidelines. It was adopted on August 1st, 2014. They're very specific about building a new garage in HP neighborhoods. And I'm just going to refer to that now as guidelines. These guidelines are supposed to be used by the staff and the HP Commission when considering applications for certificate of appropriateness. I'm here today because I believe an error was made when this application was approved, and I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. It is this approval that I'm asking you to look at very closely, as it will have an adverse effect on our neighborhood if it's used an example for others to follow. If you would please just look at the first drawing there, number 1. This was used in the 2014 CA application submitted by Catherine Montgomery and Floyd Simon for 625 Northwest 19th LLC. It's dated circa 1922. The writing in the margin is not mine. I believe that it belonged to an HP staff. It's a really cool picture. If you look over to the side, you'll see on the right there's an arch built up above a doorway. There's several of those on the block. That was something that I believe, it says arch to be reconstructed. It was approved, but that work was never done. Then if you go down the sidewalk, over to the driveway, I think you'll note that's a full driveway, and it goes all the way back to the garage. Driveway arch. If you want to take a look at picture number 2, it shows the current driveway that was put in. That's the completed driveway. That picture was taken March 17th. You can see that it has been replaced with a ribbon driveway. And the concrete is white, bright white. It doesn't match the regular color. It's kind of a sand color that they have sanctioned for historic preservation neighborhoods. I don't have a problem with the ribbon driveway. This is obviously not historically correct. The color is not right. It doesn't match the replacement concretes. There are a few examples of ribbon driveways in Mesta Park. I drove around and I counted 10, and that's including the new one here at 625 Northwest 19th. 8 of the ones that I counted are obviously very old, and several of them are in need of repair, but they do look natural to the neighborhood. The 2 located at 625 Northwest 19th and 613 Northwest 20th are brand new. They have white concrete. It's not the HP authorized sand-colored concrete. And both of these properties have the Simon property sign for sale in front. I believe these are administratively approved. You know better than I do. Look at the first photo again. And if you'd please just take a look at the driveway all the way back. There's the garage. And it actually says, note former garage. Okay. Clearly, this photo documents a single-car garage. It's located on the west side of the back property line. It was there in 1978 when my husband purchased the property next door. It was torn down in the 80s as a dilapidated structure, and the guidelines are very specific about construction of a new garage, but we'll address that in a minute. If you would please take a look at picture number 3. And also, I know you have this Exhibit 2 staff report. It was included, correct? If you would please turn to the staff report, page 1. I know, this is tedious, but I really want you to understand this.
This is why we're here.
Okay, that's why I'm here too. Okay, if you look at page 1 of the staff report, well, actually, first take a look at that picture on page 3. The bottom shot shows a small slab of deteriorated concrete that is purported to be a one-story frame auto house in the center of the north property line. And it does say that here in the staff report, last paragraph, one-story frame auto house in the center of the north property line. I believe that statement is incorrect. The garage, obviously, by documentation, is located at the west end of the property, and there's no documentation that can substantiate the claim that there was an auto house in the center of the property like that. In fact, I remember my husband volunteering to mow that auto house more than a few times when Mr. Shipp was unable to do so. What this picture does show, number 3, we're still looking at that, the picture does show the top photo, a concrete patio at the back, and nearly a full lot of green space. Now the entire yard has been paved with a concrete slab so the developer can put up a 4-car garage in direct violation of 2.5.37. Take a look at picture number 4. In case you don't have it handy, I made a copy for you. Standards and guidelines, it's all the way down at the bottom, and it says, and I'm sure you've heard this before, it is not appropriate to alter the overall character of historic districts by substantially reducing the ratio of open space to built space. ... Now then, if you would please turn to page 4 of the staff report, 4.4.5 states, and this is the guidelines that were adopted August 2014. These are the ones that are in place now and almost 2 years ago. Construction of a replacement garage shall approximate the original configuration, form, massing style, placement, and detail of the former garage as described by photographic documentation. You have that documentation. It's the first picture we put out, one-story garage at the back of the driveway. Then you move on to 4.4.6. It says, construction of a replacement garage may reasonably expand beyond the footprint of historic 1- or 2-car garage up to a total footprint of 450 square feet or 5% of the lot. So in this case, 450 square feet. These guidelines, even though you're calling them guidelines, they're very specific. They say 5% of the lot, maximum 450 square feet. The proposed garage is 817 square feet. This is an extreme deviation from the guidelines, and you may want to note there in 4.4.6, they do use the word may, but they also use the word reasonably. And this is not a reasonable amount of deviation. This is more than double what the 5% of the lot would be. I'm sorry, I'm so nervous. I'm getting dry. And there is not a single example of a duplex in Mesta Park that has a 4-car garage. I have counted 11 4-car garages or carports. Some of them are metal, some of them are wooden, and there are 19 4-apartment complex buildings in Mesta Park. I call them fourplexes. You know what they are. They're those giant buildings that have 4 different apartments, 2 up, 2 down, fourplex. They are the ones that have 4-car garages. The developer claims that because this is a multifamily dwelling, each half of this duplex should be entitled to a 2-car garage. By approving the CA for this project, the HP staff and commission must agree. I'm sure the owners of the other 38 duplexes in the neighborhood will be interested to hear about this. I doubt everybody will run out to apply for a paved backyard with a 4-car garage, but it would only take a few to drastically alter the appearance of the neighborhood in our backyards. Google Earth would change from green to concrete. This completely changes the dynamic of rainwater drainage as well that flows into our neighbors' yards instead of being absorbed by the ground. This is what's happening at the property located north of 625. Excuse me. In addition to the regular runoff the concrete currently causes, this garage is designed with gutters that catch water on the top, channel it back to the north side, and right into that neighbor's yard. This neighbor currently has sandbags to stop the water flow. She has now listed her house on the market due to her frustration with trying to get either city or HP to do something about this to remedy the situation. Would you please turn to the staff report, page 6, 1, 2, 3, third paragraph. The staff is acknowledging a precedent. They're saying, the third paragraph, there is a precedent in the district for large garages at multifamily structures, but there does not appear to have been a garage of this size at this property historically. As I have previously stated, there are 4-car garages and carports built at the fourplex apartments in the general vicinity of 625. There are 2 fourplexes almost directly behind it. It would be behind it and down 2. There are 4-car garages there at the fourplexes, and there are some 3-car garages on 19th Street. One is located at 613. One is located at 617. That one is has been declared a dilapidated structure and I believe is scheduled to be torn down. And then there is also one at 629 Northwest 19th, which is right next door to 625. It is a 3-car garage. It's owned by Mr. Frank Jones, who told me that his garage must have been built for Model Ts because you can't fit a regular-sized car in it. Therefore, they end up parking on the street as well. I think what we need to remember here is we're talking about new buildings, not buildings that already exist, and especially ones that did not exist before HP came into effect for our neighborhood. And the guidelines for the new buildings are very specific. As I said, the examples given by the HP staff were not built after the adaptation of the August 2014 guidelines. And I'm wondering, why would you adopt a specific guideline and then decide whether or not you wanted to use them? And in fact, I didn't see a reference in 4.4.6 to single or multifamily dwellings. It was only about the percentage and size of the lot. Okay. I heard one member of the HP Commission state that each case is considered individually, so I wonder, will the same blind-eyed approval for a 4-car garage be given to the other 38 duplex property owners? Does this mean that a 4-plex apartment will be allowed to build 8-car garages? Because that's basically what they're saying. Once this example has been set for new building of the proportions listed, it will be hard to deny anyone else the same right to have a similar structure. I just wonder if HP is setting themselves up for litigation every time they deny one. And I also wonder if this is what they had in mind when they adopted these 2014 guidelines. I mean, the guidelines are very specific about what a new structure should be. Okay, guys, hang in there. I'm almost done. The original CA for this developer was approved in September of 2014. We did not receive notice of the public hearing, so I wasn't provided an opportunity to voice my concerns about this process. This project. It seems that the staff had already administratively recommended approval on part of the project, and suggested it was appropriate to build a garage. Of the 5 commission members who attended the vote that day, none were opposed to the garage. The handout, take a look at page 5, please. It's a copy of an email that I contacted Katie Friddle in the HP office about extensions. This developer had a full year to complete the work. He also had the opportunity to extend the CA, which he's done numerous times at other properties in the neighborhood that he owns. He did not extend the CA. He allowed it to expire. Now, if you'll take a look at page 6, It's another email that I sent to Katie Friddle. It was sent November 11th. And even though the CA from 2014 had expired on September 16th, 2015, the work on the property continued through November, a full 2 months after the CA had expired. I think that there was a really small amount of progress that had been made there. Actually, it was only the concrete slab, the ribbon driveway, and a retaining wall. That was the only work that had been done that whole year. And I wonder if maybe the developer was concerned about having an extension granted, because I know they inspect all those things before they grant the new ones. If you take a look at page 7, please. It's a copy of, well, you can see the ribbon driveway, you can see the back slab. You see all that woodwork, you see a deck, stairways, second deck with stairways, and there's fence all the way around the property. Looks really nice. Nice job. I think it's really pretty. But it was all done after the CA expired. Just wanted to throw that in there. Let's see, where am I? Then on February 18th of this year, the applicant came forward to have a second CA submitted for approval. I'm sorry, I'm lost. And it was to go before the commission on April 6th. I got the letter about this meeting, and I did show up to voice my concerns. I was told the property was unique and that each half of the duplex was entitled to a 2-car garage. One commission member stated that the garage would keep people at the property from parking on the street, and I'm all for off-street parking, but this garage is set up in a way that it would be so difficult to get a full-size car in and out of. I really doubt that anybody's going to use it for that. I think it's going to turn out to be really nice storage. The same commission member told me that it was illegal to park on the street and that the city would ticket you, but that's certainly not the case. There's no rule against parking on the street, especially in these historic neighborhoods. There's nowhere. I mean, everybody parks on the streets. I'm not crazy about it. I mean, there's other creative ways of dealing with it. I have a 2-car garage at my duplex. You can put 4 cars back there. You put 2 in the garage, 2 behind it. It's tandem parking. They do it all over the place when it's landlocked. One commission member stated that because this application had already been approved once, it should be approved again. I don't necessarily agree with that either. But this application was approved in April, and with no discussion really about the adverse effect that it could cause on our neighborhood. And finally, got another handout for you. You have to ask yourself why this was approved so easily, not once, but twice, by the HP staff and commission. Talked to a lot of people about this. When a member of the commission has a publicly when a well-known member of staff turned designer is the one applying for a CA, makes you wonder if it's friendship or following the guidelines that wins the administrative approval. There has to be a better system than allowing a staff member to approve their own application, which appears to be the case in 2014. And this is, again, this is an example of somebody's website. It's very nice work. It's really gorgeous, but it's a member of the commission, has a publicly documented business relationship on his website, and he obviously has a business relationship with the applicant. And I just wonder if there's, I hate saying this, is he concerned about future business with this applicant if he doesn't approve the CA that's on the table? There's a realtor on the commission who shows the property regularly, and certainly he has a financial gain if he sells the property, and some people would see that as a conflict of interest as well. And finally, there's a commission member with a very long and well-documented working relationship with the CA applicant, who even offices in a building that is owned by the CA applicant. At the very least, all of these undisclosed circumstances give the appearance of impropriety. If HPC members are not going to follow the guidelines set forth by the HP standards, they should recuse themselves from the proceedings so that nobody can question the integrity of the commission's decision. At the very least, they should make it publicly known during the application process so that involved parties have the opportunity to question their ability to make an unbiased decision. If you haven't done so already, I strongly suggest that you watch the video of the April 6th meeting. I believe it will confirm everything I've presented today. This property has had a coming soon or for sale sign in front of the yard for nearly 2 years. It's rare for a property to sit unsold in this market for this length of time. Property in this neighborhood is moving, except for this one. So why hasn't it sold? Could it be that people don't want a concrete yard? The thing is, if this property doesn't sell, it could easily become another rental or Airbnb for the developer. If that's the case, we'll be stuck with a concrete yard, a 4-car garage, and a very bad precedent in the neighborhood. So please look at this case very carefully. It's about lot size. This garage is too big. The specific guidelines were not followed. Changes were approved that are obviously not historically correct. Rules for the CAs were not followed. This sets an unwelcome precedent for the neighborhood. The HPC decision appears to be arbitrary and capricious, and there is a very strong appearance of impropriety. Once the CA is approved, there won't be an opportunity to review it again. If you have guidelines, you should follow them. They should apply to everybody. Thank you. Any questions?
I have a quick one.
Yes.
In your presentation document, I believe I noted that you indicated that the original garage was a single car as well as a single-story garage.
Yes.
Why do you think that?
It's on the picture, and I've lived there since my husband bought the property in 1978. There was a single-car garage there then as well. I don't know if it was the original. It sure looked like it because it was falling down. That's where the structure was located. It was a single-car, one-story garage.
Okay, so the structure that was there when you acquired your property was just a single-car garage?
Yes.
I can't quite tell that from this picture, but okay, thank you.
You bet.
Members of the board?
He did. I'm sorry, my husband said it had been changed to storage, but I'm sure you could still get a car in it if you were not afraid of it falling down. I mean, this was a really bad building. It was scary. That's why they tore it down, I suppose.
Any other members of the board? Okay, I have several other people that wish to be heard.
Okay.
I might ask our staff person to come forward. I have a couple of just quick questions for you. They're almost housekeeping kinds of things. At the beginning of the meeting of the HP Commission, one of the members commented that there had been a number of emails about the application. And I wondered, they're not included in our packet. I wondered, were they not emails that had been sent to the entire board? They were not part of the record?
Did they suggest that they were, we do receive a lot of emails regarding cases, and oftentimes people request that we forward it to the commission. If people didn't request that, we don't always forward it. And I don't know if you're talking about emails between staff and the applicant or the contractor? So,
The context in which he made the comment, his comment was not very specific, but it sounded to me as though he had been contacted by a number of people, protestants and/or supporters, about the application, expressing that protest or support.
it is often that committee members, commission members communicate with staff on a variety of topics, and that's,
You think that's what it was, rather than,
yes. I mean, I don't know, but commission members are encouraged to ask staff any and all questions related to a case.
yes, not what it sounded like to me, but okay. In our staff report, the comment about the existing, the historical garage, seems to indicate that it was a two-car garage. What is that based on?
So I'm looking through there is, in the HP Commission staff report from April, there's a copy of the 1949 Sanborn, and it shows it shows two structures in the backyard. I believe it shows that they are one story.
Is the document you're referring to, the April 6th meeting, is that at the bottom, is it marked page 3 of 22?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know where the information on the two-story came from.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Real
Before I
quick.
start?
Yeah, I do. There was some discussion, and I don't want to jump the gun on whatever the appellee is going to say here, but I want to get your insight to it from staff perspective. There was some discussion in the video, too, or during the meeting, about it being a condo. It's a very specific legal term. Has there been a condominium setup completed here, so this is two separate parcels, or is this a duplex?
This is a duplex for the terms of our review.
Interestingly, there was also a comment made during the hearing that, the HP guidelines are really just set up for single-family residential structures, which is very contrary to my understanding. So I'd like a little clarification on that.
Was that a comment made by staff or by a commission member?
By a commission member. And it was argued. I mean, there were people that argued that point during the meeting, so.
Obviously, the vast majority of structures reviewed by HP Commission are single-family, but the guidelines apply to multifamily, even commercial, within the HP districts.
I have a couple of questions. Your staff report, one of these staff report on page 2, so there was a CA, and the one before us is just a new CA with the same...
The project is identical.
Identical. Hasn't changed except subsequent to the first CA being approved, the effective of the first CA, you have the amended standards and guidelines that identified a limitation on the number of square feet. Is that correct?
But the physical project was the same.
Yes. And you made a determination, or at least staff report made a determination that the existing conditions, that most of the previous approved work had been completed. Is that correct?
The driveway work had been done.
Okay. And there were other small things that were in addition to that. Were those done too, or do you know?
I don't know, the driveway gate was approved, but it wasn't done because the work wasn't done. I'm not sure. I know the driveway was done. The driveway and the backyard paving.
Some fencing, or I don't know. I couldn't tell. Okay. So is there still an outstanding building permit in place or anything, or do you know?
The building, they obtained a building permit, and it's still open, it's still valid.
So what was presented and objected to by the appellant here was relating to the garage, is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Were there any allegations of bias or anything on parts of the commission voting or approving?
Not at the meeting.
Raised?
No, not by the commission, not by anybody in the audience.
Okay, thank you.
One more question before we let you go. The reference to the guidelines that were amended in August, I guess on August 1st, 2014, the guidelines that pertain to the garage were these new guidelines were adopted, correct?
Right.
Why?
Before the 2014 update, there were, ironically, I guess, there were no size guidelines of any sort. It was all about character of the district, and as many new garage applications come to the commission formed a study group, and in several workshops decided, hey, we need some sort of baseline number, not a minimum, not a maximum, but some sort of threshold to start from in evaluating these cases to help them make better decisions.
Was that the only guideline that was adopted at that time, that August 1st?
I don't believe so. I think there were several little things.
Okay. Is it how often are guidelines changed or altered or adopted or amended or?
I would say no more frequently than every other year.
Okay. Thank you.
One last question at the moment. The appellant made reference to the fact that some of the work that was done to the building was done after the CA had expired. Are you aware of that? Were you aware of it at the time?
Once a CA is expired, then it is scheduled for inspection. The inspections are done by a different unit of the city, and there is a lag time from when it expires to when the inspector gets out there. So if it's quite possible you could be not quite finished, but you would have a little window to get finished insofar as you comply with the CA.
So you don't know whether it's true or not with respect to this particular property or these
No.
projects?
No, I haven't inspected it that I am aware of. Nobody has called in a violation of any sort.
Okay, thanks. Andrew Haraz, is that correct, please? Say it again for me, please. Haraz.
Can I reserve my response until I hear from the entire side? That way I can see what everybody in favor of the appellant. I'd like to address everything at one time, if possible. I don't mind responding to Ms. Woods, if that's the order that you want me to go.
It's fine. If that's what you want to do, it's fine with me.
I just think it would be easier to take everything. Speakers has something.
Colleen Hatfield, did you want to be heard? Give us your name and address, please, for the record.
Colleen Hatfield, 1019 Northwest 14th Street.
What would you like us to know?
I oppose this. I've lived in the neighborhood off and on for more than 20 years. I chose to buy my first house in the neighborhood a couple years ago after moving back after living in New York City, and I rented a couple places, and I do appreciate having rental property, having multifamily property in the neighborhood. However, I do not think that just to provide that, we should pave the backyard and make everything have a multifamily garage. I don't think that just because you have a duplex, you deserve a 4-car garage. When I lived in the duplex at 21st and Hudson on the southwest corner, we didn't have a 4-car garage. We had a 2-car garage. In my house that I live in, which is on a very slightly larger lot than this property, I have a 437 square foot 2-car garage. You know, to me, I think that if you're going to have guidelines, they should apply to everyone. If you're lucky enough to have a CA approved that is really contrary to the character of the neighborhood, you should make sure and renew that before it expires. And if you don't, you should be held to the current guidelines. Thank you.
Would you give us your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, Sherry Helsel, 609 Northwest 21st Street. And I am in agreement that the guidelines should apply to everyone. There are many of us that would like exceptions for a lot of little things that are deemed modern conveniences. But like many people have said in the past over those, including the HPC, if you want modern conveniences, you need to live in a modern neighborhood. I, too, have lived in the neighborhood off and on for 20 years. I bought my first house there when the HP had just been in play about 2 years, and people were just starting to move into the neighborhood and make the improvements that have made it such a desirable neighborhood today. I also agree that the products that I have seen from Floyd and Marvin, they're lovely. But I'm also in agreement with Rhonda that whether impropriety was in play, the appearance of impropriety was very much there. Mary Jo Meacham, who made the motion to approve, is a tenant in the building that they own. She has worked with them on several projects, including the Seaver. And it is my opinion that she should have recused herself altogether and should not have weighed in on that issue, as well as some of the other commission members who have business relationships. We would like to all be above board, and we like to think the best of everybody, but sometimes it's hard not to have your opinion swayed by the size of your pocketbook. And I am of the opinion that regardless of who you are or what your relationship is, you should have an equal opportunity to have your CAs approved based on their merit and not on who you know. I know there are many people who have small items. One of the things that was on this garage that I found kind of interesting was that they approved an 817 square foot garage, but they were concerned about the lights on it. That made very little sense to me in the grand scheme of things. The statement that it's not visible from the street, most everything is. We're in a walkable neighborhood, so at some point you can see. I know that there are certain guidelines that we have to follow for things as small as the pedestrian door that goes into your backyard. We're required to follow those guidelines, and my pedestrian door is not visible to anyone without being in my backyard. So I think that as my grandmother would say, what was good for the goose is good for the gander, and I think we should all be held to the same standards. When the staff member was talking about other guidelines that have changed, one of the things that is in the new guidelines that probably was not in the old is the green guidelines, and there are very specific things in that statements concerning permeable surfaces to aid with drainage and reduce the load on the storm sewers and so forth. So when you concrete an entire yard, there's nowhere for that water to go but off. There should be some kind of permeable surface, whether it be grass, gravel, but something that allows for that water to be absorbed rather than just creating a small waterfall. I appreciate your time and your consideration.
I have a question of the attorney on the matter that's for review by this board with respect to the issues that were presented below and what our limitations might be under the code.
So the code requires that the board only consider what is in the record from the commission below and what was issues that were raised in the notice of appeal. And if there's any new evidence presented, that it be remanded to the appropriate body for determination.
So there was already a certificate, CA, that was approved, and the reason that we are here today is the second CA. Is that correct?
Right. The first CA had expired in September of 2015, and a new application was submitted in February of 2016.
And the first CA was never appealed to this board?
I don't believe so.
So is it my understanding, so we had a CA that was approved that allowed this, and that expired because they didn't get it done in time, and they asked for a new one, and now we're going through this again. Is that correct?
Yep, this is the second CA, so it was a new application, and it's subject to further review.
For the same action?
My understanding is the project is the same.
Okay. And so for the municipal attorney, if there was a CA that was approved and we're merely looking at a renewal, effectively a renewal, that's not the correct legal term, are we, if we act on this, are we acting in an arbitrary and capricious manner considering the fact that this project has already been approved in the first place?
Since although the project had already been approved, it wasn't completed. So this is really a new application altogether. So it has a different set of standards that apply because the guidelines had changed in the intervening time.
I'll tag on to what Laura was saying. Once a CA is expired, it can't be extended. So once it's expired, if you need more time, you have to file a whole new application. At that time, you're taking the risk that the guidelines have changed in the meantime.
Which in this case they had. All right. Is there in fact somebody else who wants to speak? Oh, we have time. Would you give us your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Ann Boozer. I live at 721 Northwest 14th Street.
And what do you want us to know?
Well, primarily, I would like to simply share the fact that approximately 5 years ago, we had an old carriage house at our location that was literally falling in on itself. And when our insurance company would no longer cover it, we applied for a CA to reconstruct it. We were in a situation where we went to an architect, had plans drawn, went through the whole process, and really tried to rebuild it in the same spirit in which it was originally designed, incorporating a small workshop and putting the pump room for our pool inside there to reduce the noise for the neighborhood. We were in a situation where Marva actually took exception to that because she felt like it was too large, and we should not have a two-car garage in our backyard, even though the original garage was a two-car garage. We were forced to redesign our garage to make it smaller, which was considerable expense to us personally. I can barely fit a standard car in my two-car garage. And I do find it kind of interesting that what was good for me is not necessarily good in this case. We have provisions for off-street parking. We do live in an urban environment. And I just feel like we're to the point where it is time to acknowledge the fact that we live in close urban circumstances. And I think that maybe the same recommendation for me that was made to me and to my husband would apply here, in that if someone needs a four-car garage, maybe they should move to Edmond. So we do have some important decisions to make here that do have to do with the environmental concerns, that have to do with permeability, with the water drainage, the expenses that we're going to have on our sewers. And we need to take a stand here. If I can do the redesign, if I can be asked to do those things in my case, I think that they can be asked here too. So thank you.
I do have another question for the municipal counselor. There was a question raised as to the appearance of impropriety because of some of the persons having perhaps an interest of some sort. And I realize that we view the facts in a de novo review, but do we have the authority to determine whether someone is acting on a conflict of interest or appearance of impropriety?
And that was not an issue that was raised in the notice of appeal either, so it is not something that's properly before the board to determine today.
Okay.
I'm not sure I can agree with that statement. I think that the question of impropriety is always properly raised, in my view, at any stage.
I think then if the evidence is presented before the board, then that is something that also can be remanded to the HP Commission for them to reconsider, given those facts.
I would agree that that would be the solution if we were to consider that question.
I don't think that we have in my opinion, I don't think that that's within our scope at this point.
To determine, I agree. I absolutely agree.
I concur as well. There was no motion to recuse or anything that was presented. I did listen to the hearing, and I did not hear that, nor was it a matter raised by the appellant.
So, would you like...
At the meeting on April 6th, I didn't know anything about any of it.
Come to the microphone for me, please.
I didn't know anything about any of the commission members on April 6th. That was the first time I'd ever been in front of the commission. I came up and voiced my concerns. It was after I left, and I went back and watched the video of it. I started looking at people, and I started talking to people, and I started looking online, and I saw that these people all know each other. And I'm not saying they're all bad people. I'm just saying they should have let me know before they made their decision, so I could at least have the opportunity to know who was standing there.
Yes, ma'am, and I completely understand that, but I'm trying to define what our ability to do, from my standpoint, is if it was not raised, is that something that we can properly consider? And, you know, you may be completely right. I don't know. But I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think this board is authorized to make that decision, in my opinion.
I don't think it's relevant unless we decide that we're going to remand it on the grounds that that is evidence that should have been considered and redone. That's not the matter that was appealed, so that's not the matter that's before us at this time. What's before us is the facts that were presented there and the evidence we've been presented in our packet. That's where I would stand on it.
And what I would say about that is that I think it is always appropriate to raise this issue at any stage of a proceeding or an appeal, and that if we determine as a board that it has a bearing on the case, that the appropriate action for us to take would be to remand the case to the HP Commission and let them sort through it. So, with that, we'll hear from the attorney for the appellee.
Thank you. Andrew Haruz, 210 Park Avenue, Suite 3030, appearing on behalf of the owner. As you know, I've sat and listened to about 40 minutes. I know the rules of this. As far as allowing me a 5-minute response, I'd like to hope that it's okay if we go over that.
Nope, you have exactly 5 minutes.
Let's speak fast then. I want to start by just saying the suggestions of improper dealings and improprieties are highly offensive to us, and we do not appreciate that. First, I want to make it very clear. The owner of this property is an LLC, and the single and sole member of that LLC is Floyd Simon. By bringing in Marva Ellard and her relationships, I don't see how that is relevant to our particular transaction or what we're here in front of this board today. Making those suggestions, like I said, I just think it's inappropriate. I understand if they have a reason to do that, then that's up to them. But, you know, we live in a small city, and a relatively small city where people have business dealings together. If these things were raised in front of those HP board members, as I think was suggested, although maybe according to the video they weren't, and the HP board members decided that they didn't want to recuse themselves, and that's, to me, that's according to them. How you all deal with that, I completely understand, but I just want to make that very clear, that Mr. Simon has no dealings with people that, nothing was very specific as far as what those improper dealings were, but if we really actually need to address that, then I'd be happy to do it relationship by relationship. So,
we're not going to determine that here today, so.
But whether or not it's even something to remand back to HP. But we can move forward. So if it's my understanding, the driveway is not an issue, so I'm not going to, I know that was a portion of her presentation, but I think I can skip over that. What I really think, and what I'll try and do is be succinct with my argument, is that we look at 4.4.6, and Ms. Woods read to you a portion of that regulation, or the guideline, but she didn't read everything. And the last sentence, I think, is extremely important, and the main purpose for why HP made the decision that they did. It says additional factors, including the level of visibility of a new garage and the size and massing of surrounding structures, may be considered. The fact of the matter is these are not just cookie-cutter guidelines that you have to fit within. They're allowing HP to make certain variations due to additional factors. If you look at the old historical picture, the amount of garage that's being seen from the street is going to be very similar to how the current structure is going to be built. I understand it extends much further, but as far as visibility from the street, walking through the sidewalk, you're going to see relatively the exact same amount. And I think that's something that HP took into account. So that, to me, is something that I really want this board to focus on, is that HP was looking at, and I hope you all look at, that there are additional factors. We are a unique setting. Yes, we are currently a duplex, and it's not a condominium legally. I personally can speak, as the lawyer, I've drawn up the condo documents. The only reason they haven't been filed with the county is for a marketability standpoint. We want the flexibility of any potential owner to be able to have their input in those condo documents. But I can speak to the owner, and I can speak for the legal setting of this, is that absolutely it will be considered a condo, it'll be filed, and that's all in place. Now, with respect to it being a duplex, a statement was made that there are no four-car apartments, or four-car garages on duplexes. My client, Mr. Simon, went and pulled, I've got 4 in my hand of, and if I can approach, and I'm sorry I don't have copies. I've got a 606 Northwest 19th, which is listed as a duplex, 1.5 story, has a 4-car plus an apartment, which is a 2-story. I've got 620 Northwest 20th, 4-car, it's listed as duplex 2-story. 521 Northwest 22nd, it's a garage and apartment, takes up 901 square feet. The building itself on the first story is 1971. I mean, we're talking about very relative, in relation to what the ratios of the size of the footing of a garage or apartment building, a structure behind the main building, our ratios are very similar here. I've got a 950 square foot 4-car garage on a duplex at 400 Northwest 22nd Street. I've got a almost 700 square foot 4-car garage at 1523 North Chartel Avenue.
So can you speak to the issue of the CA and the fact that it expired and you're seeking a new one? Do you agree with the municipal councilor that it's not a, quote, renewal? Can you speak to that?
Well, if you want my legal opinion, it's actually contrary to my client. They changed the guidelines, therefore I think the new CA is something that you guys are going to be able to renew. That being said, we had a CA, I mean, if we're looking at anything at what HP and their decisions that have been made, they've approved this thing twice, and they continue to hear appeals and evidence in support and against, and they're continuing to make the same decision. So now, once again, I sat here and listened to a lot of speculation as to why my clients did what they did, and again, take offense. I mean, we've got a minor oversight as to a deadline of when the CA expired. We went through the proper procedure as far as reapplying. We didn't seek a renewal. We actually reapplied as a standard CA. We were able to go through that process. It was approved, and the only reason why we haven't started construction is because there's this big, massive cloud that's sitting over us right now. And it's creating problems. It absolutely is creating problems. So if neighbors have got an issue with for sale signs sitting in the driveway for a long time, this isn't going to speed up the process. So again, I don't know the weight that you all are putting to this, but once again, I'm listening to a lot of comments about drainage issues and how much surface area we're covering in the back and how that environmentally is an issue. We've got architectural and engineer stamp plans. None of this was an issue. And I think also there was a comment about whether or not we're going to be able to pull a car out, if we've got enough room. Until I see some sort of expert engineer, architect, bring me something that says that this is implausible, I just don't see why we're giving that any kind of weight. I think that the plans speak for themselves. I apologize. There was a lot to respond to. If you all have any specific question, I'd be happy to address them one by one.
Isn't the drainage issue, isn't that approved? The drainage, isn't that approved in the course of the CA and the building permit?
I think it all was not. It was part of the building permit, and that's not what we're here for. And that's what I'm saying. I don't know why that's even being brought up, and I don't think it's appropriate here.
One of the questions that was raised during the hearing was a question of permeability, the use of permeable structure, or permeable surface for the back pad. And apparently the initial application permitted a permeable surface. And I think even, I might go so far as to say, under the GREED guidelines in the application of those, it was recommended. Maybe that's a little too strong. Do you know whether that possibility was pursued, and if so, to what end?
I don't. I hadn't had that conversation.
Could we ask your client?
I really don't have much of a problem with that. He knows more than I do.
It was Floyd Simon. I'm the owner at 625 Northwest 19th.
Thank you.
It was approved either way. We were you can't, as far as I know, the city will not allow you to get a permit to put a permeable surface to drive on and or park on because they give tickets for that.
It's the, as far as I know, part that I would like to explore. Did you actually seek
They said we
permission
couldn't
to
get
do
a
that?
permit for a permeable surface because you can't park on it.
Who told you that?
When I went to go get a permit, the
Building permit?
yeah, the building permit.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. The building permit is still still there, right?
Active. Yes, ma'am.
How much time is left on it? What is your comment regarding visibility from the street that was raised earlier, that it would, if constructed, it might be visible from the street or other places?
As I said, the way, if you look at our plans, which have been presented, and even just this picture, about a quarter, maybe an eighth to a quarter of the garage will be visible from the street. And then the rest of it extends back. And as deep as this house is, I don't think you're going to be seeing that. Now, if you hit it at one particular angle, completely far down the street, I don't know, maybe you see two cars. I haven't gone out there and taken a look at it, but the depth of this property, the depth of the structure, and where this garage sits, I don't see that being an issue any more than what was currently there.
Another question, after it was paved, did you have anybody review it? The building people look at anything as to what you've already constructed or done? And what have you constructed so far?
And I'm sorry, what was the second part?
Did building come out, and I'm trying to figure out why it stopped in the middle of...
It stopped because we were no longer compliant because the CA expired.
Okay.
As it's been raised, people will call in violations if you continue to build outside of that CA.
The pad and the approach was inspected, though, inside the building permit, but we were outside of the CA. That's why we did stop. And the reason for the renewal was we had to apply for a new CA because once you get past that renewal date, we have to apply for a new CA. That was, if we would have applied for the renewal before that date, we would not be here.
I'm just trying to determine if anybody looked at the pad and as it was laid or actually came out there.
It sounds like it's been inspected and approved.
And you failed to extend, and as a result of your failure to extend, you had to apply for a new CA with the new guidelines.
Yes,
Is that
ma'am.
correct?
Well, wait, we're confusing two things here, Diane. The pad may have been inspected as a part of the building permit. That doesn't have anything to do with the CA. Those are...
There's permeability and some other issues regarding the pad.
I understand. To the issue with the CA and the time frame, help me piece this together, okay? You guys initially applied for your first CA on what date?
I think it's August 2014, but I'll tell you. It was applied for August 5, 2014. It was approved September 3, 2014, effective September 16, 2014, and expired 1 year later, September 16, 2015.
Okay, and when did you guys purchase this property?
I got a full county record on that.
I mean, just, has it been sometime within the last couple of years? And you bought it with the intention of rehabilitating it, is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
When did you start rehabilitation of the property? You recall? Including things you're doing on the inside and things like that?
Correct. Excuse me, this has been substantially renovated. And if we need to pull up pictures, I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous inside.
All I'm trying to get to from a relevancy standpoint is I'm just trying to connect some dots here. So I just want to understand the broader scope of what you've done over there. So you guys applied for the CA, the first CA, on August 5th, 2014. It was issued on September 16th, 2014. So at that point you began, and the CA was only, the first CA was only to the garage and the gate. Is that correct?
I think it was substantial. I think there were several items.
There were other things that were addressed.
Absolutely.
So
I
then,
can give you that list.
That's okay. Hang on. So there was a lot of other things as a part of the renovation of this project that were a part of that CA.
Yes, sir.
So you guys began to undertake that work.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so what was the holdup with the construction of the garage? Why was it what was done last? Can you help me understand that?
Absolutely. And then if he needs to fill in, that's fine. But being a part of this piecemeal, I think I've got a pretty good understanding. As I said, they worked substantially on the inside of it. It was a complete gut, removal of walls, and also converting this thing into where it's going to be considered a condo. All that was done at the beginning. Now, I know they had a lot of issues as far as when they were able to pour concrete, weather issues. Did you even have to tear that up at one point? And so just constant deals with contractors. The same reason why we gave a lady 18 months instead of 6 to 9 months earlier today. It just, and if he wants to speak to any specificity as to just the garage, I'd be more than happy to have him up here.
Well, that's fine. So the initial CA expires on September 16th of 2015. When did you apply for the second one?
Was it? Okay. January.
And at what point did you become aware that the CA had expired?
I'm sorry?
At what point did you become aware that the CA had expired, the first
I'm going to let
CA?
him speak. Sorry.
I think it was the end of November or 1st of December is when I actually became aware that we were outside of the year. I hadn't gone longer than a year on an HP project before, so I didn't realize that it didn't go as long as a building permit did, and so that's where the confusion was on our end. And as for the timing of everything, because of the significance of the rehab, there was more cost, the budget, wasn't quite there, and so we tried to do as much as we could, and we were, in the length of time and getting contractors, 3 or 4 went through for the pad, and so that's kind of really why we were not able to get it done inside of the 1 year for the HPCA.
Who made you aware of the expired CA?
Katie sent me an email, but I think she had a wrong email, and so it was an account that I didn't check. And so they sent, I believe, a letter and email. I just didn't get it until late in November.
Anybody else? Scott, you done?
When did you pour the slab? Sorry.
It was,
Not at all.
I think it started in, I think that would be June. I think it was June of 15. It ended a month or two later. We did it in a couple different pours, and then we had to cut the top and resurface the top of it because when we poured it, rain swept.
There's an image from March 2015 that I saw that shows the form set.
Yeah.
But you didn't pour it until
No,
June.
it was a few months after that.
But that was June of 2015.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
I guess we're done. Of course. Come to the podium, please. This is all, being recorded, so if you're not there, we can't hear you.
This is about the examples he gave for the other buildings in the neighborhood. He gave the example of 606 Northwest 19th. 604 and 606 is a duplex, and there's no garage there. 620 Northwest 20th Street has a 4-car garage. It's a fourplex. 521 Northwest 22nd is a duplex. It has a 2-car garage with an apartment on top of that garage. 400 Northwest 22nd, I know the guy that lives there. It's a duplex. It's 2 duplexes together. One of the duplexes has all green space, and there is a 4-car garage built behind the second duplex. So that's 4 apartments, 2 duplexes, and a 4-car garage. So that's basically like a fourplex. And 1523 North Chartel is in Heritage Hills. That property has a backyard that has pretty much been completely paved. There is still some green space left in it. And somewhere down the line, somebody built a 4-car garage back there. I don't know when they did it. I know I didn't receive any notification on it, which seems to be an ongoing problem with these projects. And it's just, it was built way before these guidelines came into effect, so it's not a new building. And we're talking about new buildings, and we're talking about the lot size of this garage. I guess that's it.
Thank you. Sure.
I just want to be clear that I wasn't trying to misrepresent anything. A portion of these, which she was saying are 2-car garages or apartments, was to express the size of the outbuilding. So we've got a 900-square-foot apartment behind a duplex, and that's what makes this thing a quadplex. All I was trying to do is give you a ratio as to back buildings to front buildings, okay? So I didn't want to misrepresent anything to you.
Okay. Members of the board, comments? I'll dive in. And I'll just put this out front, and then we can go from there. I believe that this item needs to be sent back to the HP Commission. I believe that the issue of any appearance of impropriety needs to be dealt with by them, and however they choose to deal with that should be up to them. I know if I were a member of the HP Commission, that's what I would want to have happen, and I think that it is the most appropriate solution for both sides to have it dealt with publicly, and disposed of. So I guess I can't make a motion, though. So having said all that.
Well, I appreciate your comments. I don't, fundamentally, I have to disagree with you on that. And, but there are plenty of votes here, and we can make that decision if we need to.
Diane, do you have any comments you want to make? You go right ahead.
I believe that the matter was not raised below and is therefore not before this board. We also have a de novo review and listening to the evidence and make independent decisions. I do not concur with sending it back to deal with the bias or other disqualification issues that were raised untimely. Thank you.
So I have a lot of comments, actually, that I'm going to give for the benefit. I have mixed feelings because, on the one hand, I agree with Ms. Powers that it does make some sense to give them a chance to review it. On the other hand, that's not really fair either to the people that are here, people who have building permits and other things that are open and that they're trying to move forward with. So I'm going to make my comments now, and if that's where we end up, that's fine.
Can I ask you to speak just to this issue first? The question of bias and whether it should be remanded for that purpose.
We're a de novo board. I mean, we're here to review the merits of the case. That issue is not raised by this board. No one recused himself here, and no one on this board has said that they have any dealings with either the appellee or the appellant. So I think that we can reasonably, sort of rule on whether or not their decision should be upheld on the merits. It's got nothing to do with whether or not their decision may have been affected by some sort of bias. And I am sort of the same opinion. I'm going to give deference to the sense that if they would have had some bias or thought that's their obligation to come forward and disclose that, there are people that appear before this body that I know on a personal level. That doesn't mean it affects the ability of me to rule on the merits of a case. And we've had plenty of people here recuse themselves for various reasons, and that hasn't happened. So I think we owe it to the parties to rule on the matter and try to put it to bed.
Okay, so we're going to turn that page, and if you'd go on with your comments, please.
Well, so this is, I really don't like these cases because these cases, people come up here and I hope nobody took it as being rude. I'm sitting here reading the standards and guidelines as you guys are talking about it, and this is this giant booklet that has all of these things. And my favorite thing about this booklet is that it says, in 2002, this published set of guidelines was completed to provide an easy-to-understand, common-sense approach to the appropriate preservation and enhancement. Yikes. And these cases elicit such personal passion. I try and separate the frustration that some people feel because they feel like they were treated differently than the case that's being presented before us now. Each of these cases are individual in nature, and every time the HP Commission sits down and considers a case, they should be and hopefully are considering each of those cases in a separate way. They're supposed to stand on their own, and these standards and guidelines are supposed to dictate that on an individual case-by-case basis. They're not setting a precedent. They don't have to do the same thing in two cases. The same way we could very well rule one way here, and the next person could come up and have the same thing with a slightly different set of facts, and we could rule differently. But the other thing that I haven't heard one person comment on this entire time is the standards that are set out in this and the explanation of a standard versus a guideline. So I'm going to read that to you. A standard is a rule or principle that is used as a basis for judgment. A guideline is a policy or recommended approach. As applied to this document, a standard is established by mandatory terms and guidelines are established by permissive terms, such as should or may. There are both, and the guidelines are there because this common sense and easy to understand approach has to be organic. It has to be organic to allow different cases, whether they're single family or multifamily, or there was a two-car garage or there was no garage, to come before the HP Commission and for them to rule on that matter. In listening to their discussion and to the information that was presented here that specifically pertains to what was presented there, here's what I'm bothered by. When I look at the standards and the guidelines in conjunction with each other, there was a CA granted on this matter in September, on September 16th of 2014. That CA was valid until September 16th of 2015. The slab for this garage was poured in June of 2015 within the specified time for the CA. And so then they go on, they continue their work. It wasn't as if this CA was pulled to provide for the garage. It was a part of a larger project. It was a part of something that they were doing ancillary to these two dwelling units, whether they become a condo or a duplex, although if it were a condo, my opinion would slightly change. But nevertheless, it was granted, work commenced. When you get into these projects like this, these construction projects, things get away from you. Time gets away from you. It lapses. They go back. They present the exact same application they had before. They're relying on that CA to financially make decisions to guide them through the development phase, and then it's dropped and it's appealed. And I take issue with that because there is an equity argument to be made for that I can't get comfortable with. These people are essentially being told yes, and then midway through, regardless of their errors, they're being told no. I cannot reconcile that. When I look at the standards and guidelines, the HP Commission made their decision. They looked at it, and I'm looking at it, and I don't see in here where the HP Commission acted outside of their purview to say that this is within the guidelines that are by nature organic and fungible. They have the ability to manipulate those guidelines in individual cases. It gets them in trouble. It gets them in trouble in cases where they try to uphold something that's a guideline and they want to make it a standard, and it gets them in trouble when it should be a standard and instead it's a guideline. That's the case here. There is no standard here. If you read the specific provisions that were pointed out by the appellant, these are clearly guidelines. There is one area, and in fact it was addressed by HP. I heard this in the meeting, that there's the word shall and then the word approximate right behind it. I don't know how you reconcile that one, but I'm going to err on the side of this information was presented, it was reviewed, I've heard the merits of this, and when I consider all the facts as presented, I see that the guidelines here have been upheld, though that's a strange term to use for a guideline, and I'm really persuaded by the fact that the guidelines got them the CA. They started the work. Construction projects are not always fun. They're not always easy, particularly when you're dealing with historic structures. And so I can't very well turn around on the same exact application and feel good about ruling for it. And so for that, I'm going to support the affirmation of the HP Commission's decision.
I believe the findings that were made by the HP Commission were correct findings. I think the determination whether or not there's argument about interpretation, but I do think there was discussion about multifamily versus single family and issues that be addressed. You do have factors in your language of your amended 4.6, 4.6, and the materials, although I think there was some discussion, I don't really think the materials issue was really, I think we've still, with the paving and pavement and the way it was done, I don't think the materials is an issue. There was a specific finding on the existing condition that most of the previously approved work had been completed, including the deck and stairs at the rear of the structure, driveway installation, and various repairs. Concrete has been poured in the location, but construction has not begun, and I think that fact is another specific finding that should be in there. I also would like to put in there a finding that the building permit in question that was the underlying building permit for the first CA has not expired, although there has been an interpretation that it does expire because of the language of the expiration of the CA itself. I just thought for the record there ought to be a finding that the building permit had not expired. I'm not saying that it controls over the CA language. I'm just making that note as a finding issue.
Well, this is a matter that comes to us de novo. So we, theoretically at least, have the opportunity to decide for ourselves whether the CA should have been issued or not. If that were, in fact, the only question in front of me, I would have no trouble whatsoever saying that, no, it should not have been. I don't think that the findings that were adopted by the HP Commission support the result. I mean, by just on their plain face. But I also think that they miss several fairly relevant points. But having said that, I have to also say that where I get stuck on this case is that there's no question that the paving was approved and that it is in place. And that there is really nothing that can be done about that. So the question is, if we were not to permit the construction of the garage, what would we be left with? And it would be a backyard of concrete. And that seems to me to be a nonsensical result. So I think that even I, despite many strongly held objections, would have to agree that the decision of the HP Commission should be upheld in this particular case.
I'll make a motion to approve, to affirm the decision of the HP Commission.
I'll second it.
So I have a motion and a second to affirm the decision of the HP Commission. Will you cast your votes, please? It is approved. Thank you all for coming and for your patience.
So tomorrow.
Communications reports, board committees, we don't even have any of those, do we? Board members, any comments or? No? Municipal counselor? Citizens to be heard, they're leaving in droves. Other business, I don't think so. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Motion and a second to adjourn. Please cast your votes. It carries.